boys and girls. Welcome to another episode of the Dawg House Podcast. On today's show, we have John Pickard from the Nothin Finer Podcast. We discuss Carson Beck being named QB1 for the University of Georgia, if there's any trap games for the University of Georgia on the 2023 schedule, are there dark horse teams in the SEC East and West, and the Johnny Football documentary on Netflix. If you can like, subscribe, and share the podcast, that'll really help us out. How are you doing today, John?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing pretty well. We're getting close here. We've got week 0 coming up. It's getting that time of year. Trying to stay cool out here with all these the really hot temperatures.
Oh yeah. I personally, and probably a big part of this is because I have a birthday right around Christmas. This is the best time of the year. And I say that because everybody has hope.
It is.
Like Vandy has hope right now.
They do.
Like no one is sad that college football is almost here. Maybe there are some jaded spouses somewhere, like, oh, my significant other is going to be watching football 6 days a week. But maybe you should just get into it. That's what I did with my wife. She watches every game with me now, all of them.
Exactly. Everybody's undefeated right now, so everybody's got something to talk about.
Exactly.
Yeah, jumping right over the weekend, we'll go ahead and get it out of the way because it is the big news. Is Carson Beck named QB1 for Georgia? That was Kirby. I was a little surprised he kind of came out and named him, but I wanted to get your thoughts on Carson Beck being named QB1 for the Georgia Bulldogs.
No, I was also very surprised that Kirby went out and named a starter this early, and it's not early, per se, getting close to the season here, but that's not really something he's done, with the exception of Jake Fromm and then Stetson last year. Up until then, it was an open competition. Right. So I'm fairly surprised with that, but one of the things that so let me figure out how to phrase this here. I was a Brock Vandegrift. I was 100%. I was leading the bandwagon for him to start this year up until G-Day. Watching his performance at G-Day, and I get it, it's a scrimmage, but you're still going against the best defense in the country and the guys that rotate in that spot. And Carson has performed extremely well. But one of the things that I did like about Brock is that he was essentially just a taller, stronger, faster Stetson. But no, I think Carson Beck is going to do extremely well. He's grown significantly in the last couple of years from everything we've seen from, G-Day in previous seasons and, his time in the national championship game. He's got unexpected wheels. We saw that against South Carolina. So, no, I'm really excited to see what Carson can do this year.
Yeah, same here. I think it was great. And I heard, I think it was a stat with Brooke Austin. He named it on a podcast the other day that Carson Beck is the only quarterback since 2020 that has stayed with their college football team, that hasn't transferred, that has never started. So I think you have to see he's loyal. He's stayed around. He knows the system. He got a lot of experience. Seems like a good chill guy that I think that has, he's got a lot of ice water on his veins. He's waited around, so I'm excited for him. Guess if I had to get really critical of him, I would say, he is great arm, pro style quarterback, NFL arm. But I guess he looks like he can move around a little bit. But I know Kirby has preferred that recently because Stetson could extend drives. If he'd get sacked, he could come back and had great perseverance. So that's where I'm questioning. But I think got the arm. This is probably maybe the best wide receiver group in the Kirby Smart era, hopefully. Brock Bowers, Dominique Levitt, and the other guys. So I'm really excited about it. Got a good O-line, which always helps. But I kind of want to see maybe when he has some adversity, let's say he gets down 2 touchdowns, throws a pick 6. Stetson was always able to respond. So I kind of want to see, when he gets his back against the wall. And then, but I'm excited for him. And then also, it's going to be important to see maybe who number 2 is, quarterback, because it's always, as they say, one play away. So I want to see if that's going to be
Yeah.
Brock Vandagriff and Gunnar Stockton, because I heard, great things coming out of fall camp.
One of the things that after spring practice, I was honestly a little surprised that we didn't hear more about Brock Vandagriff with a potential transfer.
Yep.
And that's not saying anything negative about him, but the difference between his performance and Carson's performance had such a larger gap than the difference between his performance and Gunnar's performance. And Mike Bobo's dad was Gunnar Stockton's private quarterback coach in high school. Mm-hmm. So there's family ties. He knows the family. He knows Gunnar, has for years. And I would say that based on that relationship, Gunnar probably knew the system a little bit better coming in, which is probably a reason why there wasn't that much of a drop-off between Brock and Gunnar. But I'm glad that Brock stuck around. I personally, I hope he's the starter next year, but it's one of those wait and see kind of things.
That is it. And then the day of age of transfers and everything, I think it's great. They have stayed around. Shows that, maybe they do like Kirby and like where everything is. But got Dylan Raiola coming in next year, so it's going to be a lot of competition. So it might be interesting if Carson Beck is one and done and goes on to the pros and has a great year. So, but it's always good to have depth. It's good to have depth, and we'll see. Another thing I want to mention is fall practice just got over with. They're getting ready for the season. Any surprises? Maybe players that stood out, maybe kind of like a winner losers type thing, stock up, stock down. Any players that you think that stood out or maybe surprised you?
So one thing that surprised me, and on the Nothin Finer Podcast, we like to call ourselves the biggest Cash Jones podcast on the planet.
Okay.
We are huge Cash Jones fans. So when Kirby was talking about how Cash Jones had the best fall camp of any running back and looked the fastest and caught the best passes, that was surprising to me just because he hadn't had a lot of real speed game reps under his belt. But also, I love it. I absolutely love it. Another one, I feel like a lot of people don't talk about special teams, but Jared Zirkle distancing himself. He was the first kicker that Kirby offered a scholarship to once he came on at Georgia. So the fact that he's coming on in his junior year, I think, is huge because Georgia has had an embarrassment of riches at the place kicker position for the better part of 20 years, if not longer. So if we can continue that, because they're, 2 games last season between Peach Bowl and Missouri that if Georgia doesn't have a good place kicker are not, like, they're losses. So Jared Zirkle distancing himself in that competition, I love that. And then
do you think he kicks right away? Is he going to kick game one from what you've heard?
I think he's got to. Okay. There's one other guy really in the thick of the competition. Neither of them did really well at G-Day, and then everything I heard about fall camp was Jared Zirkle was distancing himself in that competition with Jack Podlesny off to the NFL. Mm-hmm. I think it is his job to lose at this point, and I hope he doesn't lose it just because that means he's kicked poorly.
Right.
But Tyke Smith allegedly taking over the star position and Javon Bullard moving to safety, to me, that is a huge transition because, obviously Javon Bullard is top 5 returning defensive back in the SEC next season.
Right.
But having that position, I think one of the things that tells me is that essentially he and Tyke are going to play the same position. It's just going to be essentially like 2 roaming safeties. They can cover the run. They can get tight ends out of the backfield, running backs, all that kind of stuff, but still hit extremely hard. We saw what Javon did last year between the Tennessee game, Peach Bowl, and National Championship. And then Tyke Smith was a 3rd-team All-American at West Virginia. Hmm. So, there's, once again, just an embarrassment of riches where you've got an All-American that's been on the bench for 2 years between injuries and just guys ahead of him.
Yeah, I completely agree. I guess for me, the lining up, having the left tackle. I think it's Ernest Green and Austin Blasky. Even though I think Ernest Green had was a little bit of an ankle injury, so that might
Mhm.
separate Austin Blasky because that is important. Um, who would be your four maybe in the secondary if you had to pick right maybe today? Who'd be your starters from what you've heard?
So to get the three that are submitted in, we got Kamari Lassiter,
Right.
Malachi Starks, um, God, I just said Javon
John
Bullard.
Bullard. Yep.
And then depending on if they're in a nickel look or standard, I think Tyke Smith is 100% that star defender at this point. I mean, that's where he got his All-American back at West Virginia. And then the corner opposite of Kamari is the question mark to me.
Mhm.
And that seems to be Nyland Green's job right now, from everything that I've read and everything, along those lines. I cannot remember the other guy's name. Sorry, guys, I've had quite a few head injuries.
That's problem. Is that I keep hearing is it Julio Humphrey or Dalen Everett? Is that
Dalen Everett.
that's a couple of names
Dalen
yeah,
Everett,
yeah.
yes. And especially with Smoke Bowie out of the picture, I feel like that if he was still on the team and had practiced as well as he was expected to, it would probably be his job. Maybe rotate Nyland Green or Dalen Everett in there occasionally, but I really think it's probably going to be Nyland Green to start. And, if we're being entirely honest, Georgia has two cupcakes in the first few weeks and then South Carolina and another cupcake.
Yeah.
So I think both of those guys will get, probably split the reps 50-50, 60-40, something like that, and just kind of see how it goes in against a real live offense that's trying to beat you. I think that's going to be a big deal is just those first few games. I know that I will be watching from the stands very intently on that specific corner spot. But yeah, no, I think it's between that and left tackle for the most highly contested positions going into the start of the season.
Yeah, completely agree. And I guess one other one that I guess if I had to get real nitpicky because Georgia's deep everywhere, how about the running back room? Because there's a lot of question marks with all the injuries and banged up. Kendall Milton could be out first couple of games, a hamstring injury. Love the kid, but he's always been injury prone. Branson Robinson with foot injury, Andrew Paul coming off the ACL. Seems like the other Roderick Robinson's a bowling ball. Seems like he's been playing pretty well. Dejon Edwards coming in from last year, got a lot of experience. What's your thoughts on, or maybe who will even start against UT Martin in the running with the running back group?
So who starts? I think it's probably Dejan that starts against UT Martin. But one thing that I am really interested in seeing is Andrew Paul in non-running plays, because in high school he was such a good receiver out of the backfield. He returned kicks and punts in high school. And then obviously, one of the things that's always difficult for young running backs is blocking schemes when it comes to blitzes and stuff like that. But, the ACL injury does slightly concern me. And I say slightly because this is the same staff that got George Pickens back in 6 months, where he cuts a lot harder than a running back does. Mm-hmm. So that's not a big concern to me. I would say Andrew Paul is probably he is the guy with the most deviation in his performance, possibility wise. Like, he could either barely get any playing time or he could be the starter by week 6, in my opinion, just because of his versatility. And then I expect him to get a lot of time at punt return. Right. Just because the guys they have been putting there, Arian and Ladd, as being seniors, you don't want those guys to get hurt when they're such big offensive weapons.
Right. Yeah, completely do. I do like Dejon Edwards because he's, great out of the backfield, runs hard. He's been around. What is he, junior, senior this year? I forget.
I believe he's a junior.
Might get to see your cash Cash Jones, great name by the way. Might get to see he might get in there. Anytime Kirby mentions some names, you got to perk up a little bit. Um,
Yes.
Another
No,
one
I'm
that I worry.
actually
Yeah,
my co-host and I are talking about getting Cash Jones jerseys, but on the back instead of saying Jones, it's Cash, but the S is a dollar sign.
there you go. That's awesome. It'd be great to have him and Lad McConkey, getting some receptions and getting some love. So
I'd
that'd
love it.
be great. Yeah, no, speaking of that, hopefully with tailgate coming up and everything that our great sponsor here, we got Viva Tequila Seltzer.com. No sugar, no carbs, no gluten. Live well, live it up. If you want to drink at the pregame, drink at the pool, it's a great beverage. If you're on the golf course, Viva Tequila Seltzer.com. My personal favorite here is the Huckleberry. If you want 20% off, we have a Hustle 20. So Hustle 20 for 20% off for Viva Tequila Seltzer.com. That's our great sponsor for the year. And one of the other questions I want to ask you is, I know everybody's starting to look at it, very, very favorable schedule. So in the 2023 schedule for Georgia, very top heavy, or I call it top easy. And any maybe struggles that Georgia might have, or you want to call it a trap game for the Georgia schedule. I want to get your thoughts on that.
With the mindset that Kirby has the team in, I don't know if trap game is a concept that really applies anymore. But I will say a game that concerns me more than a lot of other people seem to be concerned is Ole Miss, because of what they are capable of doing on the offensive side of the ball. And I mean, they beat Alabama last year if their defense is 2% better. Like anytime a team threatens Alabama like that, and I know they're not as good as they have been, but that's a very emotional game for both of these coaches. So anytime there's something like that going on, I perk up and look at that. But on our show, we also recently talked to someone from that covers Ole Miss in the media, and I don't know if it's just his homerism or if it was my desire for there to be a good home game this year. But I mean, I think Ole Miss finishes ahead of Alabama in the West this year.
Oh wow, is that
Hot
a hot
take.
take?
That's a hot take.
Okay, I agree with you on that one. Also, I believe Kirby, that's one of his teams he has not beaten while at Georgia. Got blown out in 2016.
Correct.
Jacob Beeson when they went to the Grove.
It's the last
Yeah,
time they played.
that's correct. And so yeah, and then I think him and Lane being on the same team, I'm sure there'll be some maybe tweeting or texting or whatever it is with text, and you don't want to lose the Lane. Um,
No.
but I think it's going to be one of those. And then also it is, in between the Tennessee game, which is going to be a big game. Even though looking at that Tennessee schedule, they might have a couple of losses, and that one might have a little less steam to it. I know it's going to be tough going up there. It's going to be cold, but they might have two losses, and I might be Georgia might have a chance of like clinching the East. The way things are. So I'm just saying that Tennessee schedule, if Joe Milton struggles, could be tough. But another one that's more interesting, just because it's very, very tough to go there, and you're going to have Carson Beck going on the road, is that at Auburn will be a first really big test. That's one is just it's always tough to play there. Carson Beck, let's say if they gave up an early touchdown, he kind of got his back against the road to be a big tough one of his, I guess, the first SEC on the road West teams. That might be kind of tough. So that's the ones that I would say.
Auburn concerns me less just because of their quarterback situation.
Yeah, I agree.
Or lack thereof. Like obviously we saw the best they had last year, and the best they had was not great. And then they brought in a Michigan State transfer that's career wasn't much of anything to write home about in the Big Ten, let alone the SEC. So while Auburn is always a game to watch out for, I'm a lot more convinced of Ole Miss than what Hugh Freeze can do in year one.
Totally agree. I do like that one being in Athens. They'll probably circle that one. I hope it's a 3:30 or a night game. Of course, we all as Georgia fans want night games, but it would definitely probably be a 3:30 game, CBS, but night game wouldn't be bad. So yeah. And another quick question, maybe a bold prediction of maybe a team, a dark horse team to ask you in the East or the West that can make a little noise, or maybe like a dark horse team to maybe even surprise and win, maybe win the SEC or come out of the West or East. You had to pick. It's always good to make bold predictions.
So I'll give you one potential sleeper out of the East and the West.
Right.
And I'm not, by no stretch of the imagination, am I saying that the team out of the East is as good as Georgia or can really threaten Georgia for an East title.
Right.
But I do think that not enough people are talking about Kentucky's potential this year. Between bringing back Liam Cohen, getting Devin Leary, who is the NC State all-time leading passer, really only playing 2 full seasons because of injury. They brought in some offensive line transfers. They got a guy from Vandy that was a 1,000-yard rusher at Vandy. Like Ray Davis got over 1,000 yards behind the worst offensive line in the SEC last season. And then you bring in Barian Brown, Dane Key. There's another wide receiver that I'm forgetting. And they had a top 20 defense last year. Right. Like, I truly do not think enough people are talking about Kentucky's potential this season. I don't, I think they're going to be fighting South Carolina and Tennessee for second in the East, but I think it's going to be a hard-fought battle.
Right.
And then I already talked about them a little bit, but I think Ole Miss is being slept on in the West. Everybody's like, oh, Lane's already reached his ceiling. I'm not. The biggest question mark I have about Ole Miss is not their offensive line. It's not their defense. You kind of know what they're getting on defense. They brought in some transfers. They should be a little better. But if Jackson Dart can stop throwing the ball to the other team, if Jackson Dart doesn't have interception problems last year, they're 10-2, if not 11-1.
Wow.
I think a lot of that is on him trying to be Matt Corral when even Matt Corral can't always be Matt Corral. I mean, dude was a straight baller. There's really no other definition for it. But if Jackson Dart can't do it, you've got a guy behind him by the name of Spencer Sanders, who was probably my favorite non-SEC player to watch last season when he was healthy. Right. I'm a huge Spencer Sanders fan. I truly think that he should get the starting job, but Lane is devoted to Jackson Dart at this point. But if Dart messes up, you've got a guy sitting right behind you that if he takes over, say they get down against Tulane after a couple Jackson Dart interceptions, they put Spencer Sanders in. Right. I mean, Lane could not turn back. Yeah. And that would be a scary team.
I like that. Ole Miss. Or as we like to call them around here, Ole Piss. Yeah, I completely agree. If I had to pick I do like that Kentucky one. I got to look at more. Mark Stoops, great coach. He makes, hate to say chicken cheddar, chicken salad. That kind of, but I'd have to go with out of the just to maybe kind of push Georgia out of the East would be South Carolina, Tennessee. I know it's probably one of the favorites. Kentucky's an interesting one. Think about it. I just think if Joe Milton's anything like their advertising, but I think he's inaccurate, and there's a reason why he's still not at Michigan. He's kind of bounced around a little bit, and I forget the kid's name. They got a 5-star behind him, and Tennessee's got the gimmick offense. I think it's one of those. They get hot, they put a bunch of video game numbers, and I think teams adjust, almost like to the triple option back in the day. They kind of make tweaks, you get more film on them. And then out of the West, I'm with you. I think Alabama could lose 2 or 3. I don't think they win. My pick out of it is going to be LSU. But I think if I had to pick a dark horse team, I just think it's back against the wall, and there's so much talent. If he can just get quarterback figured out with Bobby Petrino, I think Texas A&M could be sneaky good. Like 8-4, 9-3, not win the West, but just maybe win one you're not supposed to and be a little better. Just if he can just let Bobby Petrino let him hand the keys over just a little bit, they could be kind of dangerous.
Yeah, no, this is something that we've talked about. I would pay a monthly subscription to get to see the team meetings with DJ Durkin, Jimbo Fisher, and Bobby Petrino.
Right.
Like 30 minutes a day. That's all I want. I pay $15 a month for 30 minutes a day of those three yelling at each other and throwing stuff across the room.
That is, yeah. That would be good. That'd be internet gold there. I like that.
Absolutely. If there was a college Hard Knocks and they didn't go to A&M this year,
Yeah,
that would be a failure.
That's pretty. Yeah, that's actually pretty good if they did follow the team around. Yeah, that'd be great. It'd be great for recruiting for sure.
Maybe not with A&M coaches' attitudes, but some schools it would be great.
It would be. That'd be must watch. I like that. And then one last thing, because I just watched it. Maybe I'm a little late to the party. Did you see the Untold Johnny Football documentary?
I did. So I was also late to it. I watched it, I want to say like last Sunday or Monday.
Yeah, I watched last Friday, so I think you had. Yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on it. It was just fresh on my mind. Great. I mean, everybody's talking about it, so I'm like, all right, had to check it out. So I want to get your quick thoughts on it.
I wish I was as talented at anything in my life as he was at football up until the NFL. He practiced drunk and hungover, never watched film, didn't know the playbook. The day he left, he did not know the offensive playbook, and somehow won a Heisman, beat Alabama.
Yep.
And like I said, I just want to be as talented at one thing in my life as he was at college football, because that's insanity. But I do want to say that, this might be a little cliche, but for him to come out and be as honest about all the different things, mental health and, how he almost committed suicide at one point, just be 100% honest about that. Like that takes a very, very brave person that's learned to live with their mistakes. And, for all the mistakes he has made, good on him for being able to own up to it. Because there's probably a lot of people that wouldn't.
Right. Completely agree. I thought it was great that they did talk to all the coaches. They talked to his family, all involved. And I thought it was just, really great. I would call it fall from grace. I kind of sit back and just like, man, he had like everything, and then just all the obstacles they went through. I guess I felt sorry for him at the very end, like you mentioned with the mental health. If it says he's bipolar, because I've been reading more into that, and I have some friends that are bipolar. You just see all the thing they go through every day, the ups and downs. So that explained a lot of things. But the pure athletic ability, and you had like everything. I think he got overwhelmed when he was at Texas A&M, but then he also wanted to be a college kid. And then I do give it to him back with the NIL, because I was thinking, like, if he had NIL right now, if you fast forward, he would be money, just blowing deals out. And then I can't blame him for back then trying to like, hey, you're making all this money, and all the money Texas A&M. I knew they made money, but all the stadium renovations and all the money from that. I mean, basically they were using the kid. That's a whole other topic. So that happened. And then, him at the very end, he kind of came from the bottom. He maybe came to his dad's door, and he's like, hey, I'm lost. I don't have anything anymore. And maybe they were able to reconcile. And so definitely great documentary, but fall from grace, and hopefully he can kind of turn around and maybe make, maybe change some people's lives and maybe be a speaker or something. So yeah, something like that.
I'm interested when the Florida one comes out here soon. It's supposed to come out before football season.
Yeah, I think it might be this week, like the 26th or something. It's
that's
Swamp
Friday.
Kings or something. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that should be good.
That is going to be appointment viewing day of.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And if Urban Meyer ever gets another job, I'll be shocked.
I completely agree. But yeah, I want to really appreciate you again, and also John, how do we follow you on the socials again? Give you a shout out on that.
Yeah, so on Twitter or X, or I don't know, they might change the name again by now. It's @FinerPod. Instagram is Nothin.Finer.Pod. If you want to go to YouTube, we also have a Facebook group where we do a lot of, just general posts. Just search us there. And then recently we've started just partnered with a company called Millions. You can go to millions.co, search for us on there. Right. We are live streaming our episodes when we record them. And then we are also going to do some watch parties for games through that. I have season tickets, so it'll be away games that we do that for, but it'll be, you can turn off Gary mispronouncing Carson Beck and listen to me be slightly intoxicated and talk trash.
That's awesome. Please follow him all those socials. He got his Nothin Finer podcast here on YouTube. So yeah, that's great that you're able to do those watch alongs are fun. I try to check some of those out with Uncle Lou when I can. I think he's hilarious.
Yeah, and I mean, just to shout out Millions a little bit. If you watch the UFC, they have UFC watch parties. They're partnered with a ton of professional fighters, stuff like that, boxers. Nazir Stackhouse is actually partnered with them if you want to do like a cameo situation. So they've got a lot of cool stuff going on. They're building out their college football network, trying to before the season starts. So if you ever want to do a watch party or anything like that with us, there's a comment section. So we'll, be posted up responding to you guys if you choose to watch with us.
Yeah, check them out on Millions. That's great. I'll try to put that in the link in the description there. So you guys on Millions. That's great. Yeah, appreciate you coming on, John, and the season.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. And
yes,
go
sir.
Dogs. And
go Dogs.
That's another episode of the Dawg House Podcast. Please check us out. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.